almost busted in Laredo, but for reasons that I'd rather not disclose.
I smoke pot, and I like it a lot. Hi, this is Willie Nelson. I learned a long time ago that marijuana is a lot safer to use than alcohol. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the responsible use of marijuana by adults. It's time we stopped arresting and started respecting responsible marijuana smokers in America. And to learn what you can do to help, please contact NORML at www.norml.org or call toll-free at 888-67-NORML.
The show was long and we were just sitting there, and we'd come to play and not just for the ride.
And distributed by the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws in Washington, D.C. This is your daily audio stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Welcome to the most popular audio podcast regarding marijuana in all of America and all the world, featuring interviews with scientists, politicians, doctors, prohibition policy activists, regular cannabis consumers, musicians, and NORML staff and NORML's board of directors, along with music and comedy no other podcast can offer. You can always find out more about the show at our website, normalaudiostash.com. We're ending marijuana prohibition with education, one listener at a time. Welcome back to the Audio Stash. Today is Thursday, May 3rd, 2007. I'm your host, Chris Goldstein. Take a moment to join us at NORML to end marijuana prohibition in America. Just visit NORML.org to get involved today. Speaking of getting involved, we've got a great news story for you today about the Republican debate happening tonight, how everyone can get involved with this new digital democracy that we're all participating in. That'll be in our news here in just a moment. Also on the program today, we'll speak with Dr. John P. Morgan about pot potency. There was some great marijuana available in the 60s, and John will talk about that. And also, how do we test for pot potency? All that today here on your Audio Stash. Let's get to our news. Our news today. Marijuana questions may be posed in Republican presidential debate tonight. The Politico.com website is co-sponsoring a debate tonight between the Republican presidential candidates. That's at 8 p.m. Eastern Time on MSNBC. In a modern twist to the debates, some of the questions posed to the candidates will come from the Internet and questions that are voted on by Politico.com readers. Some of those questions directly address marijuana. Matt Simon of New Hampshire's Common Sense for Marijuana Policy Group offered some of those questions to Politico.com and is encouraging marijuana policy reform advocates to get involved today to help get those questions posed. We've got Matt on the line now. Matt, welcome back to the Audio Stash today.
Thanks very much, Chris. Great to be with you.
Thanks again for joining us today, Matt. Now, how can these marijuana questions get into this debate tonight through Politico.com?
That's right. Politico.com, yes, it's a political discussion site. They're a co-host of the debate that's Thursday night, and they're going to try a unique format for part of the debate. They're going to use questions which have been submitted and voted most popular by readers on the website. And since we'd been preparing an NH Common Sense to begin approaching presidential candidates with questions, we were ready for the opportunity. We had a bunch of questions ready, so they got submitted to the website, and one of those questions shot into the top 10 in the voting almost instantly, even with no attempt at publicity, and I saw that as a great sign in and of itself. That question is, the next president will preside over the 40th anniversary of America's longest war, the war on drugs. Are we winning the federal war on drugs? If the answer is no, what serious policy changes would you institute as president? And that question we know has been advanced to the final round of voting, which will take place during the debate. And I'm hoping activists across the country will feel like logging in at 8 p.m. Thursday evening and voting for that question, among others.
So it sounds like this is the American Idol for debate questions.
That's how I understand it. It'd probably be helpful to register with the site in advance. The first round of voting is going on right now, and questions will be selected from that. There are now over 2,500 written questions in the system. I don't know how many they'll advance to the final round. In addition to this question, there were a few others we had in the top 100 as of yesterday, so we might be able to get multiple questions into the final round of voting, which takes place live, and those questions will then be somehow fed to the moderator.
Now, Matt, there at New Hampshire Common Sense, I understand you weren't just doing submissions for these questions in text form, but you also made some video submissions as well.
That's absolutely right, and I'm really proud of our supporters on this who took advantage of the opportunity that was presented to them. Video questions, they asked for people to submit video questions for the debate, and there are only a total of 9 questions that have been submitted by people across the country through this site. 4 of them are ours. Our friends at Keen Free Minds Television in Keene, New Hampshire, that's freekeen.com is their website. I think they're worthy of a plug after doing this. They recorded 4 video questions. They're on the site. One's a medical marijuana question. One's a question about industrial hemp. One's a question about marijuana prohibition in general. One's a question about the drug war in general. And those can also be voted for now and probably, I expect, during the debate. And that's yet another chance to get yet another question possibly asked in the debate.
Now, in the 2004 presidential race, we saw absolutely no discussion of drug policy in general or marijuana specifically. But do you think that these topics are really unavoidable this year?
Well, I think that we can make it unavoidable with a coordinated effort by activists who are willing to take chances and try to seize opportunities and get our issues covered properly in the media. That's the biggest hurdle facing the entire reform movement is getting our issues covered properly. It's easier said than done, but I think we can do it if people are willing to coordinate their efforts and willing to go out there and be perceived as responsible citizens who are willing to insist on a change.
Now, in grassroots activism, we often talk about writing, calling, and contacting our elected officials, but it's just as important for all of us to have a two-way dialogue with the media, news media especially. I
think so. One of my little sayings I just developed is that it's one thing to catch a buzz, quite another to go out and create a buzz. And the way to do that, I mean, we have the Internet, which is obviously the best way to create a buzz. We saw what it did for the Howard Dean campaign in 2004, and it's, the Internet's the reason that we're going to win eventually, that prohibition as we know it can't be sustained. There's too much real information out there now, and people are finding it, but we have to help them find it, and we have to get that information off of our screens and into the real media, which is perceived as the real media. If it's not on TV, it didn't happen. So we got to move our ideas and our evidence from the blogosphere, where we're already doing pretty well, out into people's living rooms, voters' living rooms, and whatever else. And when candidates are willing to step up and make, take positions that we favor that are on tough issues, we have to support them. We have to make it a soft political landing for politicians to vote for our stuff. They have to look at polls, and they have to kind of go with the flow if they want to get elected. Well, we need to be part of the flow. At least a third of the people in this country want cannabis to be legal, and that voice isn't being brought to bear, I don't think, effectively in the national discussion. Not as effectively as it could be.
Righto.
With 18 major party candidates and something like 9 months until the primaries start happening, we've got what I think is a very unique opportunity to raise these issues now, and hopefully there will be ripple effects from that. I'm just optimistic. I think that this is something that can work.
And Matt, I heard you're also going to be posing the marijuana question to presidential candidates as they make their way into New Hampshire for this primary season.
We are working on a next project, which I alluded to before, with our unique opportunity. We've got these presidential candidates swarming our state. They're starting to show up all the time, and we'll be launching a new website and a new effort that will be focused on, affecting the presidential primary process as a way to raise these issues. And, we're certainly hoping for a lot of cooperation from activists in other states, especially other early primary states. So you can file that under coming soon. I'm hoping that'll be launched within 10 or 12 days.
Right on, Matt. Many thanks for taking time to join us again here today.
Hey, thank you, Chris.
Thanks again, Matt. Matt Simon is with the New Hampshire Coalition for Common Sense Marijuana Policy. And the Republican presidential debates with Politico.com are tonight, May 3rd at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, again on MSNBC. Everyone can log into Politico.com today and get those marijuana questions asked tonight. The Internet really is a digital democracy, folks, so let's get involved. We have links to do so at NORMLAudiostash.com.
What's up, everybody? This is the infamous Bobby Black from High Times Magazine, and you're listening to NORML's Daily Audio Stash. Stay cool.
House music vomit. House music vomit. House music vomit.
We're going to talk about pot potency here today with one of the nation's leading experts on the subject, Professor Emeritus of Pharmacology at City University of New York, Dr. John P. Morgan. John is also co-author with Lynn Zimmer of the book Marijuana Myths, Marijuana Facts. We have links to the book on our website at NORMLAudiostash.com. John, welcome back to the Audio Stash today.
Thanks, Chris.
Really is great to speak with you again, John. You're the perfect person to ask some questions here about pot potency.
Lynn Zimmer and I, when we worked on the book called Marijuana Myths, Marijuana Facts, I realized that I'd had a discussion with the DEA agent who informed me in 1974, and we actually found a reference to what he'd informed me, that we faced increasing potency and toxicity because of it in 1974. That's the first time I heard this statement made in 1974, and it's made 50 times a year since.
And John, there's been a ton of ridiculous rhetoric and tainted science reported on both here from the U.S. and the U.K. in the last few weeks. But let's clear the air about this potency question first with this. Was there high THC marijuana available in the 1960s?
Oh, yes. We actually only knew how to measure potency after 1967. That's when Meshulam said the active ingredient in marijuana is delta-9 THC, approximately 65 to 67. He had a preliminary paper in 64. So we first started measuring delta-9 THC in the late 1960s. Now, to give you some idea, there was a laboratory in Menlo Park, California called PharmChem Laboratories, who in those days were analyzing street samples sent in by mail. And although the DEA did not permit them to publish the potencies that they were discovering, later on, someone you may know, Michael Aldridge, gathered together a bunch of those and found that in 1972 to 1975, the mean was, the average was 2 to 5, and there were 14 and 15% samples found. That's 1972 to 1975. And almost certainly, of course, that was true in the 1960s.
Let me also ask you this question. I've posed this to some other guests here on the Audio Stash. How much ditchweed hemp made it into the potency testing in the past?
Back in the day, there certainly was. Although people were aware of it, the dilemma is there has never been a systematic study adequately designed to answer the question that everyone would like to know. What is the potency of marijuana that's sold on the street? What is the potency of marijuana used by all members of NORML? What is the potency of marijuana used by people within the sound of my voice? Now, no one knows that, and no one has ever known it. Now, let's quickly change to the one survey that we know about, which is the Mississippi Marijuana Monitoring Potency Monitoring Project. In the early 1970s, the DEA and NIDA, the National Institute on Drug Abuse, gave a large contract to the University of Mississippi to do a number of things, including grow marijuana for research and to supply the few legal federal medical patients. But probably the most important thing, or at least the most obvious thing that Mississippi did, was begin to analyze samples of marijuana. Now, critical for you and all your listeners. All of the material analyzed in Mississippi, which now is about 60,000 samples, is all resultant from police seizures. And it's all in samples greater than 75 grams, and in fact most of them are over 300 grams. So this means major busts. It means sometimes material that it had been planted 2 weeks ago and 5 acres were busted and it had no THC in it. Sometimes it was a ton on a boat coming in from Jamaica or Colombia, and sometimes it was 75 milligrams in some poor guy who was flying a plane between Los Angeles and Buena Vista. So we've never really known exactly what that material represented. It has always been criminally seized. It varies enormously. It can be trusted because the guy who runs it is a perfectly adequate scientist, although he seems at times to be somewhat in the pocket of the DEA. But so we know what the Mississippi data show, and actually this recent burst of quoting is for the first time I've ever seen the Mississippi data quoted very much. Usually there's just some police chief says marijuana potency has increased 2 to 10-fold in the last 50 years, and he never gives a reference. There are almost no references in newspaper articles or statements of anti-drug people. But recently, people have referred to the Mississippi Monitoring Project, which again, as I'll repeat once again and then let you ask any other questions, is only seized material seized and sent by the police, and it has to be greater than 75 grams, and most of the time it's greater than 300 grams. It may represent something, some idea of what's on the street, but it's not a definitive study. There has never been a definitive study.
Now, does potency really even matter? I mean, other than for us cannabis consumers and connoisseurs who are looking for that particularly kind bud out there?
It appears to matter relatively little. That is, if you give people in studies material that's, say, 5 times more potent, 1% times 5, 2% times 10, they will say, this is good, I'm quite high. They also will smoke less of it. Most of the time they adjust their smoking habits downward if they're given very high potency material. Now let me say the bottom line. There are no, I repeat, no studies showing that higher potency marijuana is more dangerous. None. Zero. Nada. Absolutely not one. In the 40 years the government has been funding studies, they have not done a study to show that higher potency marijuana is more dangerous. And in fact, in my opinion, what we know from street use and people's self-adjustments, higher potency marijuana is not more dangerous. In fact, I keep mumbling on. In one instance, it's clearly safer. If you give people high-potency marijuana, they dump less crap in their lungs because they smoke it with less deep inhalation because they feel the high coming on quicker. So high-potency marijuana is safer for the lungs than low-potency marijuana. But there has never been any study showing that high-potency marijuana is more harmful in any way.
John, I also understand that there's no science to show that marijuana is addictive.
No, there are studies to show that people like a high THC marijuana a little bit better, and some studies, some very small studies, have shown that they are they prefer it. They say this is better stuff. But the answer to your question, has there been a study showing that in the small percentage of people who become dependent, that's because they have higher potency material? There are no studies which say
so. There's nothing to say that marijuana is addictive at all. I mean, could we separate out this notion of pot addiction with this idea that people do have this predisposal from psychology, from their environment, but some people are predisposed to addiction in general?
There is a real possibility that there are some people, and whether it's genetic or not, I don't know. There's a lot of speculation in it. There are some people for whom the only drug that's enough is too much. And there's some people, when given marijuana, will smoke large volumes of it, and they have a little teeny tiny withdrawal syndrome when they stop. There is no, and so maybe there is a slightly and a mild physical dependence, but there still is no evidence that the percentage of users who are behaving foolishly has gone up, And in fact, the rule that we came to believe about 30 years ago, that of all the psychoactive substances which humans ingest, marijuana appears to be the least toxic. Now, let me say one other quick thing. I keep promising quick and not coming through for you. Our enemies in the ONDCP on down to the police chief in small upstate New York towns, they have learned to say, yeah, this new potency marijuana is causing more people to go into treatment, and it's causing more emergency room visits. And they say, see, that's the evidence. And, of course, that's no evidence at all. The reason there are more people going into treatment is that there are more people making money off of offering services to young people in trouble. And it's been well shown in a couple of studies, and you may have talked to Paul Armentano about this, that over half of the people who enter marijuana treatment are there not by their own choice, but because they've been sent there by a court or they've been ordered there, forced there by their parents. Now, the issue of the emergency room admissions, it's not emergency room admissions, it's emergency room mentions. So people who are in the emergency room reporting system, which is called the DAWN system, the Drug Abuse Awareness, the Drug Abuse Warning Network, that people are funded to gather drug mentions. And if somebody comes in and mentions a drug, then they go to him and interview him, and they're allowed to collect 4 more mentions for a total of 5. The fact that marijuana is mentioned more frequently is an indication that marijuana is getting more publicity. All of the ONDCP articles which talk about it causes a kid to mention marijuana when he goes to the hospital for some other drug-related problem. The important thing to remember is that there is no evidence that people who come to the emergency room and say it's marijuana who's harmed me are harmed, and one of the best proofs of that is that they are rarely, if ever, admitted to the hospital because of a marijuana mention. It is a mention, and it's a reflection of the noise in the culture over marijuana. These two claims related to the metatoxicity of the new highly potent marijuana, is that it causes more admissions and it causes more addiction. There is not meaningful evidence that either of those things are true, and there's no meaningful evidence that marijuana is more harmful now than it's ever been.
And John, please, tell us how this test for THC potency is actually performed.
It's really quite difficult, and it's still high amount of testing. You have to remember that THC is a relatively potent chemical. There's only tiny amounts of it, and we measure it by a gas chromatography, mass spectrometry, in which we put the sample through a winding glass tube to separate the THC out by different things in the tube and different gases passing through. And then when it comes out the end of the tube, we explode it, and we look at the pattern of exploded compound, and we can say, oh, that's delta-9 THC, that's morphine, et cetera, et cetera. And so there is no way currently that we could have any even sampling mechanism through a vapor collection and a central data point. It's just impossible.
That's amazing. So, that sounds like a pretty large and expensive piece of equipment there.
Oh, indeed it is. Indeed it is. When I think about the fact that El Soli has analyzed 60,000 samples over the year, it's astonishing how much money the DEA and NIDA have paid to the University of Mississippi to run this project.
Righto. Well, if only it were so easy that we could have some device that you could plug into the USB port on a computer and put some marijuana in and have it come up on the screen what the potency is there.
Oh, how excited this stuff gets me. Can I close by quickly saying, this is not, when you hear that this is a 20% THC sample, that doesn't mean the plant is 20% THC. It means the preparation. It means someone has carefully gotten the buds and the flowering tops off and ground it up, and it has no crap or crud. It has no stems or seeds, and you analyze it, it's 20% THC, but that's a single sample. The plant cannot make that many. There are not fields full of 18% THC sitting out there in eastern Kentucky. This is an issue of sample and preparation to make a high THC sample.
Well, I love the science here, John, but you've just dashed my imagination here, the magic of thinking that there are fields of marijuana that are all 20% THC.
No, I think you won't. You can have fields that can probably be harvested and treated to make very effective THC. On the other hand, humans are quite happy smoking 3% THC. They find it perfectly positive and good stuff.
Well, John, this has really been a great conversation today. I can't thank you enough for joining us here again on NORML's Daily Audio Stash.
A pleasure. Good, Chris.
Many thanks again, John. I look forward to speaking with you again. Dr. John P. Morgan is Professor Emeritus of Pharmacology at the City University of New York. He's co-author with Lynn Zimmer of the book Marijuana Myths, Marijuana Facts. We have links to the book on our website today at normalaudiostash.com.
755,000. That is a big number to be sure, but do you know what this number represents? It signifies the total number of citizens in America arrested on marijuana charges in 2004. That's right. 755,000 of your fellow citizens were arrested on marijuana charges. That's an arrest every 40 seconds. And 9 out of 10 of those arrested are for possession-only charges. Does continuing marijuana prohibition make sense to you? It certainly does not to the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws and its members. I'm NORML's Executive Director, Alan St. Pierre, and if you too think that it is high time to end marijuana prohibition and replace it with a tax and regulate policy, please join and support NORML's 36-year legislative efforts to reform our country's misguided marijuana laws. You can learn more about NORML or become an active supporter by calling toll-free 888-67-NORML, N-O-R-M-L, or by visiting us on the web at NORML, NORML.org.
We're going to get out of here with some music today. This is from the NORML High Times album, Hempilation 2. Here's Blue Mountain with this great chill tune for a nice Thursday afternoon. Here's Mary Jane.
This world of hurt and mistreated, break these chains of misery. Mary Jane, Mary Jane, I need you to keep me safe when I'm down low, sinking in pain. Mary Jane, Mary Jane. Shining eyes, crazy laughter, you take me higher than I've ever been. But the bottomless hole that comes after, what can I do for all you get? Mary Jane, Mary Jane, I need you to keep me safe when I'm down low, sinking in pain. Mary Jane, Mary Jane. Mary Jane, Mary Jane, I need you to keep me sane when I'm down along singing pain. Mary Jane, 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 Mary Jane.
That was Mary Jane from Blue Mountain from the Hempelation High Times Normal album. We have links to it on our website today at normalaudiostash.com. You've been listening to Normal's Daily Audio Stash, the growing truth about cannabis. Make sure you visit our website at normalaudiostash.com. That's NORMLAUDIOSTASH.com for more information about every day's show. I'm your host, Chris Goldstein. Thanks for listening today. See you at 4:20 tomorrow. The podcasting technology of NORML is made possible by Red Aphid Interactive Media. More information at redaphid.com.